My wife of 23 years, Rachel, was stuffing her most treasured stuff into plastic bins, humming like she was just tidying up for spring. Meanwhile, I stood there in the family room doorway, tears streaming down my cheeks as I watched her. A wave of hopelessness and despair hit me hard, knowing she was about to walk out on our life together any minute. Deep down, part of me was already furious with her for the cold way she dropped the bombshell of her betrayal just a few hours ago. But, if I'm being honest, I was also mad at myself for falling apart like this. Standing there, quietly sobbing, I couldn't help but think a tougher guy, like her new man, Mark Reynolds, would have handled it differently, maybe with anger or something. But he wasn't the one getting stabbed in the back. He was the guy Rachel was running off to, the one she'd give her heart to in California. As I lingered there, with Rachel acting like I was invisible, my mind replayed the last few months, trying to piece together where it all went wrong. It started about 6 months back when Rachel's company, a big national insurance outfit, brought in this guy Jericho as some hotshot efficiency consultant. Supposedly, he was a wizard at streamlining businesses, cutting out waste, and all that corporate mumbo-jumbo. His deal with the company was set to last 6 to 9 months. Rachel, being a department head, had to work side by side with him to make the whole overhaul quick and painless. Looking back, that's obviously where things took a bad turn. Before this Jericho character showed up, Rachel never gave me even a hint she'd stray. She was the kind of wife who'd get a little stung if I even glanced at another woman when we were out somewhere. She'd always say I was the love of her life and she couldn't picture herself with anyone else. Man, this Jericho must be something else, because in just a few months, he completely won her over. The day started like any other. I was making plans to surprise Rachel with dinner at her favorite spot that evening. But then, right after lunch, she called me, asking me to come home because we needed to talk about something serious. Naturally, I hightailed it back, and there she was, sitting on the couch, calm as could be, which wasn't like her. My first thought was something happened to our kids, Anna, our oldest, who's studying at college in New York, or Ryan, who's in the army out at Fort Lewis in Washington. Andrew, sit down, she said. I've got some tough news to share. Are the kids all right? I blurted out as I plopped next to her. Yeah, they're fine. This is about us, something I never saw coming. Out of nowhere, like a punch I didn't see coming, Rachel told me she'd fallen for another guy and was leaving me that very day. She laid it out plain as day. It was Mark Reynolds, a name she'd only dropped a couple times in passing since he started working with her. I'd met the guy once when I had to swing by her office to pick her up because her car was getting fixed. Watching him in the lobby, charming everyone, it hit me in about 10 seconds that he thought he was God's gift to the world. Sure, he was good-looking, probably mid-30s, decked out in flashy clothes, rings on his fingers, and a shiny gold Rolex on his wrist. With that slick charm and pretty boy face, he probably got whatever he wanted. I never would have guessed Rachel would fall for that kind of showy act, especially since she's older than him. She's 42 and stunning, but I figured she'd see right through a guy like that. Why would a younger, smooth-talking dude go for my wife? Turns out, I was dead wrong. Rachel tried to break it down for me like this. From the moment she started working with Jericho, there was this spark between them that just grew stronger every day. She apologized for how it all went down, saying I'd been an amazing husband, but she felt it was time to turn the page and start a new chapter. Rachel, are you really going through with this? I asked, my voice cracking as I watched her snap the lids onto those plastic bins. This is nuts. You barely know this guy. I get that maybe things between us have gotten a bit routine, but to just toss our whole life together like it's nothing? I can't wrap my head around it, I said, the hurt spilling out. You don't know the first thing about him. Mike's been an open book about his life, she shot back, giving me this weird look I'd never seen before. Back in the day, Rachel used to gaze at me with this warm, soft smile, her eyes sparkling with love. Now, her stare was this cold mix of irritation and detachment. Out of all the gut punches I took that afternoon, that look hit the hardest. Right then, I knew it was over, she was head over heels for someone else. "Andrew," she said, "try to get it and maybe even be happy for me. I've found a guy who lights up my world and shares my zest for living." "Are you kidding me, Rachel?" I shouted, my whole body trembling from the crazy stuff she was saying. Right then, she hurried over, grabbed both my hands, and pulled me in close. I wasn't dumb enough to think she'd suddenly snapped out of it, but I didn't pull away either. "Andrew, I've made my decision. You've got to let me go," she said, then let go of my hands and turned back to the 2 boxes she'd packed. She tried to hoist them off the table herself, a tough job, but managed to get them onto the floor and onto the hand truck we kept for moving stuff. It sank in that she was done with me, not just as her husband but as a person, so I let her wrestle those boxes out the front door by herself and over to her SUV. When she popped the rear hatch, I spotted 2 big suitcases already in there, packed with the clothes she was taking to kick off her new life. When Rachel laid out her plan to leave with Jericho, she mentioned that in the divorce, I'd keep the house and both cars. She also said she'd told her lawyer she wasn't going after alimony. My gut twisted because the way she said it felt like she thought those were some kind of generous parting gift. All she wanted was half our savings, $65,000, to be exact. She was walking away from the 3,000 square foot house we'd called home for 15 years, a place she'd poured her heart into, obsessing over every detail from the foundation to the roof. Every single thing in that house, the light fixtures, the wall colors, the furniture, the appliances, was her choice. She loved that place in a way that sometimes baffled me. Knowing how much time and energy she'd sunk into building and perfecting it, I couldn't help but wonder if something was seriously wrong with her, like maybe she'd hit her head and it changed who she was. "Andrew, I've left divorce papers and some contact info on your office desk in case anything happens with the kids," she said as she climbed into her car. "Let them know I'll reach out in a few weeks." "No way, Rachel," I snapped, anger bubbling up. "I'm not gonna be your go-between with our kids. You're gonna have to face them yourself and explain why you're doing this. And trust me, I know Anna and Ryan, they won't warm up to Jericho, and they might just cut you out for good." For a second, that seemed to break through the haze of her affair, like it shattered the rosy dream she'd been living in. Rachel brushed it off fast, hopped in her car, and started the engine. Just when I figured she'd peel out without another word, she rolled down her window. "Andrew," she called out, "I'll have someone drop my car back off. Keep it, pass it to one of the kids, or sell it, I won't need it where I'm headed." With that, she rolled the window up, backed out of the driveway, and took off. That's when the neighbors must have figured out something big went down, because I dropped to the ground right there, bawling my eyes out like a kid. Thankfully, one of my oldest buddies, Henry Collins, was a lawyer who knew his way around divorces. We went way back to our high school football days, tossing passes and tackling dummies. A couple hours after Rachel sped off to chase her new dream life, I gave him a call. This was after some neighbors found me sprawled out on the driveway, helped me up, and got me back inside the house. Over the next few days, Henry tracked down Rachel's lawyer, some guy her new boyfriend was footing the bill for, and said he was a breeze to deal with since Rachel had made it clear she wanted a no-fuss divorce. She'd already moved the $65,000 from our joint savings to her own account and, through her lawyer, signed away any rights to alimony, the house, and her car, which showed up back at our place the next day. All that was left for me was a waiting game, anywhere from 30 to 90 days for the paperwork to slog through the system. Henry was pretty sure, though, it'd probably be closer to a month. Those next few weeks are a blur to me now. Lucky for me, my boss and the folks at the engineering firm I worked for heard about my marriage falling apart and stepped up, handling the last few projects I had on my plate. Once those were wrapped up, my boss even dug up some obscure company policy about hardship cases and got me an extended leave of absence. My kids, Anna and Ryan, were completely in my corner once they found out what their mom had pulled. They both wanted to drop everything and come home, but their own grown-up lives, college for Anna, the army for Ryan, kept them tied down. As for Rachel reaching out to them, you'd think a mom who just ditched their dad after over 20 years would at least pick up the phone to explain herself. Nope. When I called the kids after talking to Henry, they told me they hadn't heard a peep from her in weeks. Man, that Mark Reynolds must have some kind of magic spell. After those calls with Henry and the kids, I pretty much checked out, holing up in the house and dodging everyone else. A few weeks later, a bit of clarity started sneaking back in the morning after Henry rang to say it was time to sign the divorce papers. Problem was, that meant I had to look halfway decent in public. So, I dragged myself into the master bathroom, the one Rachel spent a whole month picking out fancy fixtures and decor for, and caught my reflection in the mirror. For the first time, I saw this gaunt, hollowed-out guy staring back, with a scruffy gray beard that made me look like a stranger. Thinking back, I couldn't even remember the last time I'd eaten a proper meal. I'd dropped at least 30 pounds since Rachel left, and honestly, I looked so rough it spooked me. All of a sudden, this rage boiled up inside me, fury at how I'd been played and betrayed. I did something totally unlike me, I slammed my fist into the mirror. Glass flew everywhere, shattering across the sink, and my right hand got sliced up bad, blood dripping all over the place. It took a trip to the ER and a few stitches to finally shake me out of my haze. Afterward, I still had enough time to clean myself up and head to Henry's office. Henry gave me this worried look as I reached for the divorce papers in his firm's conference room. You'd think a tough divorce lawyer like him, who'd been through his own messy breakup, wouldn't have much sympathy left for a dumb sap like me, still hung up on the wife who walked out. Well, Andrew, it's official, you're a free man, Henry said, trying to sound like it was some kind of good news. Lucky me, I shot back, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Andrew, he said, getting up to wrap up our meeting, I know this feels like garbage, but you got off pretty easy here. Losing just $65,000 out of everything you two had. That's a steal in any divorce playbook. With the laws in this state, I've seen cheating wives clean out their ex-husbands for way more than that. I didn't say a word, finding zero comfort in what Henry said as I stood to shake his hand and head out. That's when I noticed this young paralegal, a blonde, probably in her 20s, stepping into the room, her eyes practically screaming pity as she looked at me. A sharper, smoother version of myself might have leaned into that sympathy for a little solace. But let's be real, I've never had that kind of game. I'm no Jericho. Knowing that guy had not only stolen my wife but was also camped out in my head rent-free was almost more than I could handle. I shuffled out to my car, my mind spinning about what the heck I was supposed to do now. My whole world had revolved around Rachel and the kids. With Anna and Ryan grown and off living their lives, Rachel had been my everything. Once I got in the car, I lost it again, not caring if anyone saw me fall apart. But at some point, I guess my brain kicked into survival mode, and I pulled myself together. That was the last time I shed a tear over her. A couple weeks later, I was back at the engineering firm, trying to piece my life back together. The worst part? The way everybody looked at me. Most folks gave me these sad, pitying stares, but a few shot me suspicious glances, whispering behind my back. Guess they figured there had to be some big reason Rachel ditched what looked like a picture-perfect marriage. The real torture came when I went back to the house we'd shared. Rachel's touch was everywhere, she'd poured so much into making that place her dream home. It hit me so hard that every night I'd dream she came back, pleading for me to take her back. It didn't take long to know what I had to do. A few days later, I had a moving van from a used furniture dealer pull into the driveway. I sold him nearly everything in the house, cheap, too, just to stick it to Rachel's ghost. When they cleared out, all that was left was my bed, the big screen TV, the basic kitchen stuff, a couch, and my old recliner. The place was so bare, every noise bounced around like I was living in a cavern. But I wasn't finished. Even when the kids were still home, that house was way too huge for the four of us. No way was I rattling around in it alone any longer than I had to. The next day, I got on the phone with a real estate agent. A few weeks later, I stumbled across a cozy patio home for sale and jumped on it right away. I put the big house on the market at a steal, and it got snatched up by a family with 4 little kids. Watching the mom and dad walk through those empty rooms, their faces lit up with excitement for their new start, gave me the first real spark of happiness I'd felt in months. It had been a little over 4 months since Rachel turned my life upside down, and I was starting to carve out a new routine for myself. What really lifted my spirits was hearing that Anna and Ryan had completely shut their mom out of their lives. Turns out, Rachel and Jericho jetted off on a 2-week cruise after they landed in California, and she didn't even bother reaching out to the kids until long after they got back. About 6 months after Rachel took off, my phone lit up with a call from some random number. It was late in the day. I'd just thrown a frozen pizza in the oven and cracked open a cold beer when it buzzed. I ignored it and went back to the movie I was half watching on TV. Later, out of curiosity, I looked up the area code and got a chuckle when I saw it was from San Francisco. Probably just some telemarketer, I figured, but it felt good realizing I didn't give a darn whether it was Rachel trying to reach out or not. A few months down the line, Rachel's sister, Linda, aptly named, since she could be a real piece of work, called me up, saying Rachel had tried getting in touch. My mind flashed back to that San Francisco call. "Look, Linda," I said, "I'll take your word for it, but I haven't heard a peep from her. Honestly, our marriage ended in a pretty ugly way, so I've got zero interest in chatting with her. Plus, she made it crystal clear that Jericho's her so-called soulmate. If it's about the kids, she's gotta fix that mess herself. I'm not lifting a finger to help my ex, and frankly, even if I saw her in deep trouble, I'm not sure I'd step in." Linda and I never really got along, so it was no shocker when she hung up without another word. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if things had gone south between Rachel and her new guy. If she'd slammed into some harsh reality with Jericho, she'd be in a tough spot with no one to bail her out. Her parents were long gone, and Linda and her husband were busy looking after his elderly folks. Even if Anna and Ryan were on speaking terms with her, neither had room for her to crash with them. "Oh well," I muttered, taking a swig of my beer. "She's got that $65,000 to soften the landing, right?" It hit me then that I'd forgotten to tell Linda I sold the house and everything in it. A month later, the other shoe finally dropped. I was in the office I shared with another engineer when my desk phone rang. "Hey, this is Andrew Evans, what's up?" I said, not even glancing at the caller ID. "Hello, Mr. Evans," a woman's voice replied. "I'm Dr. Sylvia Altman from Sacramento Regional Hospital. I'm calling because your wife, Rachel Evans, is my patient. She was in a car accident a few days ago and just woke up. Her Illinois driver's license lists you as her next of kin." I couldn't help but let out a laugh, which clearly threw Dr. Altman off. "Yeah, Doc, we've been divorced for almost a year now. My ex-wife should have updated her emergency contact info. She's with a guy named Mark Reynolds, he's the one you need to call." "Here's the thing," Dr. Altman said with a sigh. "While Ms. Evans was out cold, the police traced the car's plates and got in touch with Mr. Jericho. He's made it clear he wants nothing to do with her and says they weren't in any kind of serious, long-term relationship." "Well, damn," I said. "I'm not sure what to tell you, document. Like I said, we're divorced, and the way our marriage ended was a real gut punch for me. I don't see how I can help Rachel out here. I hate to sound bitter, but she burned every bridge we had. Last thing she told me was how she and Jericho were destined to be together." "Right," Dr. Altman said. "Mr. Jericho's even had his lawyer contact the hospital to say he doesn't want any more calls about Ms. Evans." "Doc, Rachel's got money," I pointed out. "She walked away with $65,000 from the divorce," I said, already sensing where this was headed. "Ms. Evans told us that money's long gone, and she doesn't have any health insurance," Dr. Altman replied. "Mr. Evans, your ex-wife keeps asking for you, convinced you'll step in to help her." "I'll grab the earliest flight I can," I told her, barely believing I was saying it. "Would you like to talk to Ms. Evans?" the doctor asked. "She's got a tough recovery ahead, but she's been eager to speak with you," she added, clearly relieved someone was coming for her patient. "Nah," I said. "I need to check in with my lawyer before I say a word to her." Dr. Altman didn't push back, and I got the sense she understood how messy our breakup was. We chatted a bit longer, going over the details of the car crash. From what I pieced together, Rachel and Jericho had been arguing, and she took off from his place in one of his fancy cars. Rachel was never great behind the wheel, so driving a high-powered ride on unfamiliar roads in a storm pretty much explained the wreck. Dr. Altman hinted, without saying it outright, that Rachel's exam showed signs of physical abuse from Jericho. After a call with Henry, my lawyer, I booked a flight to Sacramento and got to the hospital after a layover in Dallas. It was morning when I sat down with Dr. Altman. I wanted to lay out my side of things before facing Rachel. The doc wasn't thrilled with what I had to say but didn't block me from going forward, especially since Rachel hadn't stopped asking for me since she woke up. I stepped into her room and saw her sitting up, awake. Her right arm was wrapped in heavy bandages, and her face was a mess of cuts and scrapes. I noticed her busted nose and black eyes but couldn't tell if that was from the crash or Jericho. The second she saw me, it was obvious her Jericho fantasy had crumbled. She looked at me with that old soft smile and spark in her eyes, like I was still her everything. All I could think was, not a chance. "I knew you'd come rescue me," she said, then broke into these wild sobs. "I've been such a selfish idiot," she choked out between cries that sounded like a mix of guilt and relief that I'd shown up. A nurse popped in, but Rachel waved her off. A few minutes later, she got a grip on herself. That's when she realized I was still standing by the door, not budging toward her bed or showing any kind of feeling about seeing her. "Andrew, please come closer," she said, starting to sense I wasn't here to play her hero. "I know what I did was awful, that I threw away our life and our family for a guy who started hurting me just weeks after I ran off with him," she went on, watching me for any sign of softening. "Rachel, tell me every detail, from the day you met him to now," I said, my voice icy as I pulled a chair from the end of her bed and sat down. She started spilling how Jericho had sweet-talked her into thinking her life with me was a waste, using his slick charm to convince her she deserved a thrilling new start with him. "How many times did you two get physical before you packed up and left?" I cut in. "Andrew, please, I don't want to go there," she mumbled, looking away. "Answer me," I said, my tone sharp enough to startle her. "About a month after we started working together, it was happening 3 times a week," she admitted, her face burning with shame. "When did you first realize you'd screwed up? That Jericho wasn't the soulmate you swore he was?" I pressed. Tears welled up again, but she answered, "Just a few days after we got to his place, he whisked me off on a South Pacific cruise," Rachel said. "A couple days in, he turned real bossy, telling me not to make him look bad in front of other passengers. He kept comparing me to other women, saying I didn't measure up and that he was doing me a favor by sticking around." "What happened with you crashing his car?" I asked. Rachel stared down at the hospital blanket for a long moment, silent, before she finally spoke. "About 3 months after we got back to his house, he started hitting me. That's when it hit me how blind I'd been, how I'd made a terrible mistake. I wanted to call you, to beg to come back home, but Mike had taken my phone ages ago. If I needed to make a call, I had to use his. One day, he left it on the table while chatting with one of his creepy buddies. I saw my shot and dialed you. It rang a few times, then went to voicemail. I was crushed and wanted to try again, but Mike came back in. He figured out I'd done something and beat me so bad I ended up at one of his doctor friends' places. That guy patched me up without reporting it. He and Mike thought my black eyes were hilarious. When we got back to his place, he attacked me again." Rachel broke down, tears streaming. I'll give her this, she was owning up to it all. Once she pulled herself together, she kept going. "Mike left me alone at his house for days, saying I was too embarrassing to be seen with. I couldn't get a hold of you or the kids, so I worked up the nerve to swipe one of his cars and drive east. All I could think about was getting home and pleading for you to take me back. Somewhere near Sacramento, I lost control and crashed. Next thing I knew, I was here. What about Jericho? What did he do when he realized you were gone? I asked. The car was registered to him, so when they told him about the wreck, he wanted nothing to do with me. He just wrote off the car as a loss. Right before the cruise, he'd talked me into handing over my money to him for safekeeping. Guess that cash went toward covering the crash. We sat there, staring at each other in silence for a good few minutes. A tiny part of me wanted to reach out, to ease her pain. Hell, that little piece of me was itching to scoop her up and bring her home. But the truth was, there was no home to go back to. And more than that, I couldn't erase the memory of her cold, detached face the day she walked out. No way could I ever trust her again, not after that, not even with everything we'd been through in our marriage. So, Rachel, what do you expect me to do with all this? I finally asked, curious what she'd come up with. She started crying again, and I swear those tears felt real, full of regret and sorrow. It didn't seem like she was just mourning some failed romantic adventure. I felt a pang of pity, she must have been so damn lonely. Andrew, she said, summoning her strength, I want to go back home. I want to crawl into our bed, wake up next to you, and spend the rest of my life making up for the pain I've caused you and our family. Rachel, there's no gentle way to put this, I said. What you did to us was a living hell. The home we built together. It's gone. I sold it all to claw back some shred of dignity. Your presence lingered in every corner of that house, I couldn't stay there, surrounded by memories of you. It was too much. I bought a small place across town, and I live there alone. I've gotten used to it, and honestly, I like it that way. The air in that hospital room was thick with emotions, but Rachel sat there, stunned into silence. I could feel the same kind of gut-wrenching disbelief from her that hit me like a freight train when she blindsided me with her affair and walked out. Can we try again at your new place? She asked. I can't picture my life without you, she added, and I was floored she could say that without flinching. After she poured her heart out, begging to come back and start over, I just stared at her with a coldness I couldn't have imagined a year ago. Back then, I thought our lives were bound together forever, so tight I'd have thrown around a cheesy word like soulmate to sum it up. But in just a few months, she torched all of that. Worse, she cut ties with our kids, Anna and Ryan, with nothing but a vague promise to me that she'd explain later. Her choices were so selfish, so short-sighted, so wrapped up in herself that I couldn't even entertain the idea of letting her back in. The wound she'd carved into me was too deep. We used to be tangled up together, but now all I saw was dead weight I needed to shed. I scrambled for something to say to her plea. Then her last words to me from months ago popped into my head. Rachel, you made your call, and I set you free. Now it's your turn to let me go, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. She opened her mouth to speak, but I could tell those words, her own words, hit her like a slap. Her face twisted in panic, like she'd just realized her lifeline was gone. She wasn't just alone, she was broke, with nothing to her name. I'm leaving you a check for $10,000, I said, getting up to head out. Henry, my lawyer, told me not to do this since you gave up any rights to the house or alimony. So, think of it as a one-time gift. It's some cash to get you started again. What you do with it is on you. Whether the kids ever let you back in, that's between you and them. Rachel's tears came flooding back. Andrew, please, I've got nothing left, she sobbed. I'm terrified, and there's no one else. Help me. I'm begging you. I turned and walked out without another word. As I made my way down the hallway, her screams echoed behind me, calling my name, pleading not to leave her stranded in a city she didn't know. I caught a glimpse of a nurse hurrying into her room. On the flight back home, it hit me that even after the divorce, I'd let Rachel's choices box me in, limiting what I could do with my life. Seeing her in that hospital bed, owning up to the colossal screw-up with Jericho, gave me back a piece of myself I'd lost. Even more, watching her face when she realized I wasn't her savior, that her future didn't include me, set something free inside me. That sense of vindication felt like a weight lifting, but it also brought this strange kind of peace. I'd been stumbling through the wreckage of our marriage for too long. It was up to me to clear out the broken pieces, all those old promises and happy memories. It was time to start fresh. As for Rachel, she picked her path. Now she's gotta live with it. 5 years down the road, I found myself standing at Rachel's graveside. After they let her out of the hospital, she'd gone back to Jericho, probably because she had nowhere else to turn. I reckon she handed over the $10,000 check I gave her to him, since it got cashed. A few weeks later, someone found her body in an alley, beaten to a pulp. Whether Jericho was the one who did it, I'll never know for sure. The cops looked into him, and he claimed he'd kicked her out, wanting nothing more to do with her. They couldn't pin anything on him, no evidence, no charges. Rachel's sister, Linda, grudgingly brought her body back home to be buried. As I stood there staring at her grave, I noticed it hadn't been tended in ages. The small headstone was caked in dirt, except for a tiny patch where part of her name peeked through. I brushed it clean, it felt like the least I could do, and took a good look. My wife, the woman I once called my soulmate, the love of my life, lay there, reduced to nothing way too soon. What a heartbreaking end for a woman who fell for a smooth-talking charmer and let him ruin her. I started to walk away but paused for one last glance at her lonely, forgotten grave. A few snowflakes drifted down from the sky. I tugged my coat tighter around me and headed off. Rachel rested there, unmourned, with no one left to love her. That's the end of this story, folks. If it hit you in the feels, give it a thumbs up and maybe leave a comment about what you thought. Your support helps get these tales out to more people. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button, it means a lot and keeps me motivated to share more stories like this. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.